with news from across the Federation, spanning the region and covering the globe. This is the Kyssfm SKN News Now Morning Edition, your one true source for news. And now your presenter.
Good morning. Today is Thursday, 25th January 2018. I'm Ebony Brandon. These are this morning's top stories. Nationally, Speaker Michael Perkins is attempting to defend his actions in Parliament on Tuesday. Internationally, leaders at the World Economic Forum have denounced protectionism, and in sport, disgraced U.S. Olympics Dr. Harry Nassar has been jailed for 175 years. We also have today's weather and a look at Carib Update. We now take a look at the national developments. In an attempt to defend himself against accusations of gross incompetence, Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Michael Perkins, has denied that he is working in collusion with the government against the opposition members of the House. On Wednesday, Honorable Marcella Liebert said Tuesday's proceedings, in her mind, provided further reason to believe that the Speaker continues to make biased rulings against the opposition members and to loosely interpret or completely disregard the rules and traditions of the House in favor of the government's wishes. Speaking with another media house, Mr. Perkins dismissed the accusations as utter nonsense, and although Ms. Liebert's comments were made outside of the National Assembly, he added that he considered this statement to be disrespectful to the chair. As in the past, the Speaker claimed to only make rulings in the House in accordance with the standing orders. Ms. Liebert was also very critical of the Speaker's decision to allow the Attorney General, Honorable Vincent Byron, to bring a matter which is in the hands of the courts before the National Assembly. On Tuesday, Mr. Byron informed the House that action was being pursued in the court to have the seat of MP for Constituency 6, Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, vacated over allegations that he has become a citizen of another country.
And then, later on, allowing the Attorney General to speak for about 20 minutes on a matter that is sub judice, a matter that is before the court. He himself said so, that they brought a claim against Dr. Douglas and they filed it in the court the day before. So it's in the court. The rule says that you can't speak on a matter that's sub judice unless, in the opinion of the Speaker, it does not prejudice any of the parties involved, the interests of any of the parties involved. So it's not just the opinion of the Speaker. It has a qualification. The opinion of the Speaker must be guided by whether or not he thinks that it's prejudicial to any of the parties involved. Listen to the Attorney General yesterday. And the only person who doesn't think that that is prejudicial to Dr. Douglas, what he was saying in there yesterday, is the Speaker. I think the only person who thinks so is the Speaker.
The Speaker had a response for this criticism as well and attempted to defend both the Attorney General and his decision to allow what was said. According to Mr. Perkins, he saw no problem with the Attorney General's presentation regarding the government's action against Dr. Douglas, as Byron was only informing the nation and the House that a claim to determine Dr. Douglas's status in the House had been filed in the High Court. The Speaker said, in his opinion, there was nothing untoward or out of order with that being done. And in other news, Dr. Terence Drew says he's disappointed in Senior Minister Vance Amory's update to the National Assembly on the ongoing issue of the poor air quality at the offices housing the Department of Labour. On Tuesday, while Mr. Amory said the Ministry of Labour takes the health and safety of its employees seriously and has taken action to remedy the air quality concerns raised in the 2017 Bureau of Standards report, he also appeared to suggest that at least 2 of the workers who complained of being ill may have been stretching the truth. Dr. Drew expressed disappointment and concern over Mr. Amory's remarks, stating that he was in no way qualified to make any of the pronouncements he did.
Minister of Labour, the Honourable Vance Amory, accused the staff of going on sick leave to embarrass the government. I would like to say that the Honourable Vance Amory is not qualified to make statements like these. This is really trying to pull the doctor's good name through the mud when he knows very well he has no background to comment on it. I would like to say to him and the PS that you have a building over there that was deemed to have high levels of carbon dioxide and suspected mold. The Bureau of Standards confirmed that the carbon dioxide level was very high. I don't know how much time Vance Amory spends in that office, but if he spends enough time, I think he too might have to access the care of a medical doctor. For having to breathe in and breathe out high concentrations of carbon dioxide in any environment would affect the human being in many different negative ways. And instead of humbling himself and taking the necessary measures and following protocol when an environment would have deemed bad for people to occupy, that he really took off to condemn the people who are on sick leave. And so he wants to really condemn the doctors also. And I think that that is disrespectful.
Dr. Terence Drew. In international developments, world leaders have issued a defense of globalization and multilateralism at the World Economic Forum in Davos, all apparently aimed at a particular guest. But the politics of Davos go beyond Donald Trump. The spotlight also fell on the new leadership in Africa. The likely next South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is there and also Zimbabwe's new president, Emmerson Mnangagwa. Jonah Hall reports from Davos.
On the eve of Donald Trump's arrival in Davos, an anti-Trump cold front has blown into town. Leader after world leader has taken to the podium this week to warn about the dangers of populism and protectionism. The young French President Emmanuel Macron was to have been the star attraction this year until Trump announced he was coming.
Merci beaucoup. Ladies and gentlemen, my first message is that France is back. France is back at the core of Europe.
Now Macron is leading the resistance.
Quelques dizaines de kilomètres d'ici.
A few kilometers from here, there are people who think the solution is to get out of globalization. And there are more and more people who are convinced that that is the right option. Now, that means we have a major challenge to meet.
Earlier, it was the turn of the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who talked about what she called a polarizing state of affairs.
Wir glauben, dass Abschottung uns nicht weiterführt.
We believe isolationism will get us nowhere. We believe we have to cooperate, and that protectionism is not the right answer.
But the politics of Davos go beyond Trump. This year, the spotlight has fallen on new leadership in Africa. The likely next president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, is here, as is the man they call the Crocodile. Emmerson Mnangagwa earned his nickname as a fighter in Zimbabwe's War of Liberation. He's now the man who plans to put Zimbabwe back together again after decades of Robert Mugabe's rule.
Now we are saying to the world, Zimbabwe is now open for business.
Zimbabwe has good reason to be hopeful. The global economy is doing well for the moment, putting a slushy spring in investors' steps.
And in sport this morning, ex-Olympic gymnastics team Dr. Larry Nassar has been sentenced to 40 to 175 years after testimony from nearly 160 of his victims. The judge dismissed Nassar's attempted apology as insincere, saying he would be in darkness for the rest of his life. Nassar pleaded guilty to 10 counts of sexual assault against girls and young women, including Olympians. The 54-year-old had already been sentenced to 60 years for possession of child pornography. Throughout the 7-day hearing, the stories were strikingly similar. The former USA gymnastics team doctor would call the women in for treatment, but instead of taking their pain away, he stole their innocence. Some were so young they didn't realize until years later that they had been sexually abused. Judge Rosemary Akalina revealed he had written a letter to her after his guilty plea, claiming his accusers had fabricated allegations to gain money and fame. The judge read a passage in which Nassar said he had been manipulated into admitting his guilt. In 2015, USA Gymnastics, the sport's top governing body, quietly cut ties with Nassar over allegations about his professional care. An investigation in 2014 resulted in a 3-month suspension from Michigan State University, where he coached, but he continued to see patients until he was publicly accused of abuse in 2016 by the Indianapolis Star newspaper. Later that year, he was arrested and charged by Michigan officials with sexual contact with a child. A year later, he was sentenced for child abuse images found on his computer. As the court adjourned on Wednesday, the U.S. Olympic Committee announced it would hold an independent investigation into the sex abuse scandal. On Tuesday, the National Collegiate Athletic Association said it too will investigate Michigan State University's original handling of the gymnast abuse claims. And with that, we now turn attention to today's weather forecast. Across St. Kitts and Nevis today, conditions will be fair to partly cloudy with a 20% or slight chance of showers. Tonight will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy after midnight with an 80% or very high chance of showers. Seas are moderate with wave heights of 1.2 to 1.8 meters or 4 to 6 feet. Cautions remain in effect for small craft operators and sea bathers against above normal sea conditions. Winds are east to northeast, ranging between 10 to 14 miles per hour with slightly higher gusts over open waters. The sea level pressure is 1016.1 millibars or 30 inches. The sun will rise tomorrow at 6:31 a.m. and set today at 6:03 p.m. With that look at the weather, we now have a look at today's headlines once again. Nationally, Speaker Michael Perkins has attempted to defend his actions in the Parliament on Tuesday. Internationally, leaders at the World Economic Forum in Davos have denounced protectionism. And in sport, disgraced United States Olympic Dr. Larry Nassar has been jailed for 175 years. I've been your presenter this morning, Ebony Brandon. Stay tuned. Up next, Carib Update.